The different interests, talents, and modes of expression of girls and boys, carefully cultivated during their formative years at home and school, were then taken as further proof of the natural gulf between the male and the female worlds. Margaret Fuller and her childhood upended all of this. Although she was a girl, she was intellectually and temperamentally raised as a boy. Her father, who had no desire whatsoever and no use whatsoever for a daughter, raised Margaret's mind as if she was his son. As Dr. Tandeka recounts, her father, Timothy Fuller Jr., was also her tutor. He was a staunch old-line Unitarian rationalist who served 4 terms in the U.S. House of Representatives. He tyrannically ruled over every aspect of Margaret's life, endeavoring to raise her as the boy he wanted. Paternal love from this man was earned rather than freely given. If she achieved, she had worth. If she did not achieve, she was not loved. So Margaret Fuller became the ultimate overachiever. She could read and write at the age of 3. By age 6, she was translating Virgil from Latin into English. By the time Margaret Fuller was 9, she read literature in 4 languages and wrote literary critiques of major European philosophic and literary texts. She developed a confident language of analysis and debate. The little girl learned to argue like a boy. Each night, at the end of Margaret's grueling day of scholarship, hours and hours and hours and hours of scholarship, still a little girl, 6, 7, 8, when her father returned home from work, he would enter her bedroom, awaken her, and make her recount for hours what she learned during the day, traumatizing her. Reflecting on the years she endured this paternal invasive abuse, Fuller said, "I did not go mad, as many would, because I had too much strength to be crushed. And since I must put on the fetters, I could not submit to let them impede my motions. My own world sank deep within, away from the surface of my life. But my true life was only the dearer that it was secluded and veiled over by a thick curtain of available intellect and that coarse but wearable stuff woven by the ages." This turning within allowed Margaret Fuller to slowly develop a deep, imaginative, richly emotional inner life. This inner world would eventually prove her spiritual salvation. She began to listen to a quiet inner voice, a gentle guidance. She began to feel, she believed, the presence of the Spirit of the divine within her. It left her determined to save her life, to claim her life as her own. This was no easy feat, for she would have to bridge the contradictorily masculine and feminine identities that had been forced upon her. For although he raised her intellectually as a boy, Margaret Fuller's father had never let his daughter forget her passive place in a male-dominated world. Dr. Tandeka writes, "He believed the role of a daughter was that of absolute service to him. He was tyrannical. Margaret learned to conform to his absolute desires and expectations of her as son, daughter, companion, and doting devotee. Her life was a mix of contradictions. As she explained in a letter written in November 1932, "I have 2 souls, and they seem to roll over one another in the most incomprehensible way. All my tastes and wishes point one way and seem forced the other." To remedy this, Dr. Tandeka observes, Fuller undertook the grueling work of uniting her 2 souls, her male-trained intellect with her inmost personal feelings and intuitions as a woman. She wanted to become an intelligent woman rather than a woman with a man's mind. This union of mind and heart, body and intellect was hard won. And then, one day, out in nature, while walking home from a church service, Margaret Fuller had a powerful aha moment. She had what some would call, and what she believed was, a mystical experience. She was 21 years old. She stopped and looked at a stream, but it was for her as if she was looking at her own life, and then beyond her life into the life of the all. She later wrote, "I paused beside a little stream. It was shrunken, voiceless, choked with withered leaves. I marveled that it did not quite lose itself in the earth. Suddenly, the sun shone out with transparent sweetness and passed into my thought, a beam from its true sun, which has never departed from me. I remembered how, as a little child, I had stopped myself one day on the stairs and asked, 'How came I here? How is it that I seem to be this Margaret Fuller? What does it mean? What shall I do about it?' I remembered all the times and ways in which the same thought had returned. I saw how long it must be before the soul can learn to act under these limitations of time and space and human nature. But I saw also that it must do it. It must act, that it must make all this false true."